It's exactly 8 o'clock. A very good evening to you. Welcome to News Hour. I'm Vuyo Mruni. The top stories tonight. The car strike is over for now. As COSATU gears itself for a two-day national strike this week, we take a closer look at the cost and benefits of privatization and restructuring. And a secret document spells more problems for white farmers in Zimbabwe. Let's take a look now at the top story tonight. While thousands of workers in the tire industry are set to down tools tomorrow, the crippling 3-week-old car strike has been suspended. 20,000 employees will return to work tomorrow morning. But NUMSA has warned that things are still hanging in the balance. Car manufacturers have yet to sign a final agreement with the union.
NUMSA has accepted a proposed agreement brokered by the CCMA. Under the agreement, workers will get a 9% wage increase as from July this year. They will also get increases of 1% over and above the inflation rate next year and the year after. The union says it has suspended the strike pending the employer's approval of the proposed agreement.
We would have taken a decision as NUMSA to call off the strike as of tomorrow, but however, given this intransigence and the irresponsible attitude on the part of AMIO, we've taken a decision to suspend the strike as from tomorrow rather than calling it off.
It is always a far better thing to be able to open the plants fully and get back to normal. So employers definitely welcome the suspension of the strike, and we believe that as from Monday we can get on with the job of trying to recover from the damage.
NUMSA says the sticking point for employers is the proposal that workers retain the right to strike over any dispute during the 3-year period of the agreement.
What this particular provision means with reference to the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa is that the arbitrator appointed in any dispute would have to take cognizance in resolving a dispute or making recommendations to the parties of the provisions of the Labour Relations Act and the Constitution of the Republic, which contains and enshrines basic fundamental human rights. AMIO says, no, we're not comfortable with that. Reference to the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa must be excluded.
Well, I don't think press statements can be the basis for negotiation. The CCMA is in charge of this process. They are speaking to both parties. They're trying to get us closer together. A lot of progress has already been made, and hopefully even as we speak, progress is being made. So hopefully within the next few days, we should be able to get to the point of being able to sign an agreement.
The industry can now breathe a sigh of relief as production lines are to start moving again. But without a signed and sealed agreement, the car manufacturing companies are still under pressure. NUMSA has threatened to resume the strike if they don't accept the CCMA's proposed agreement as is. Mbongeni Mutwa, SABC, Johannesburg.
The Public Enterprises Minister Jeff Radebe says the essence of government's economic policy remains unchanged. Speaking on the SABC's Newsmaker program this morning, Radebe added that the doors of negotiation between the tripartite alliance partners remain open.
The government says the economic policy is in line with agreements reached with its alliance partners, COSATU and the South African Communist Party.
For COSATU to say now in 2001 that they never agreed on these policies, it boggles one's mind.
But COSATU counters that although it had been consulted, it never agreed to privatization, and that's why the Trade Union Federation is taking to the streets. The regional mass action of late will culminate in a national 2-day strike, which coincides with the opening of the World Racism Conference in Durban. Radebe says the timing of the strike is unfortunate and negotiations remain the preferred option of government. But
the essence of our program, the essence of the economic policy of the ANC can never be changed at this present moment in time.
Accusations and counter-accusations between old comrades. Is the tripartite alliance on shaky ground?
The tripartite alliance at the moment is undergoing very serious challenges which needs to be taken on board when we meet.
Radebe says the government placed full-page newspaper adverts today to outline its position. He again accused COSATU of misleading the public on the issue of privatization, an issue that has been simmering and is set to boil over on the streets of Durban later this week. Riaz Patel, SABC, Johannesburg.
Later on our program News Hour, government and COSATU will give us a first-hand account on the key differences between the alliance partners on matters relating to privatization. A joint operations centre has been established to coordinate relief efforts in the flood-ravaged areas in Cape Town. More than 10,000 families have been left homeless after the worst rains in 40 years.
The heavy downpours have eased up, bringing some relief to flood victims, but the hardship is far from over.
There seemed to be a receding of the situation. There seemed to be some drying. However, I must just stress that, you know, we're still told there is a cold front coming through now this afternoon. And we are told that there will probably be, as the weather forecast indicates, a let-off over 2 days. But Wednesday, there's another cold front. So I don't think we can exactly rest on our laurels.
In this centre, specially set up for the relief effort, city officials are working round the clock to assess damage and coordinate assistance. An assessment report has already been submitted to the National Disaster Management Centre in Pretoria. Local authorities are also looking at various options to solve the crisis.
Tomorrow, there is a high delegation getting together between the city and the province, and we will be looking at an interim measure of how we can provide land for these persons, probably moving them to higher ground land.
With more rains forecast, the flood victims are hoping that their plight will receive urgent attention, and they are hoping that President Thabo Mbeki will soon declare the affected spots disaster areas. Vuisilam Doda, SABC, Cape Town.
More Pan-Africanist Congress members could face dismissal if it is proved that they colluded with the expelled Deputy Secretary-General Wanda Masombuka. Investigations to find out who worked with Masombuka in allegedly defrauding party members of 350,000 rand are continuing.
Masombuka was suspended in July, and after investigations, he faced a disciplinary hearing. He was expelled along with 2 other members, Sillo Parker and Moses Mapanga. The party had proof that the trio defrauded its members. 220,000 rand was deposited into a Vanderbijlpad bank last year. They allegedly co-signed checks withdrawing the money. From another account, 120,000 rand was withdrawn. Now the PAC is attempting to recover the money.
And that money must be paid back with immediate effect, failing which we have 2 options. So the first option is to go to the police, and the second option is to take them to court in a civil case and sue them for the return of that money.
But Masombuka maintains his innocence. He says those involved in his dismissal were opposed to the changes that he wanted to make in the party. Now he'll challenge the decision in court.
My name is at stake here. I need to clean my name. It's not about coming back to the PAC. It's about just cleaning my name.
The PAC says Masombuka's dismissal is a clear sign that the party is serious in fighting corruption. But Masombuka claims that there's internal strife within the party. Isaac Masamula, SABC, Pretoria.
The British newspaper, the Sunday Telegraph, says it has obtained a secret document outlining President Robert Mugabe's plans for white farmers in Zimbabwe. The document states that the ultimate aim is to force all white farmers out of Zimbabwe before the presidential elections scheduled for next April.
Since February last year, ZANU-PF militants, calling themselves war veterans, have been invading white-owned farms, sporadically but systematically, with President Mugabe's approval. Things have got worse in recent weeks. White farmers, provoked into protecting their lives and their property, have been arrested. Journalists have been arrested. Opposition party members have been beaten up. The judiciary has come under pressure. The Sunday Telegraph says it's all part of Mugabe's plan to retain power at all costs. The newspaper says the secret ZANU-PF document orders party supporters to go all out in getting white farmers off the land. It offers big rewards to anyone harassing and mentally torturing white farmers and members of the opposition. Entitled Operation Give Up and Leave, it says operations should be thoroughly planned so that farmers give in and give up. The document also urges ruling party supporters to undermine the movement for democratic change. It says the opposition should be infiltrated and destabilized. Political analysts say Mugabe is so scared of losing power, he's prepared to take the entire country down with him. Last week, Zimbabwe's independent Financial Gazette said Mugabe had virtually declared war on his own people. This week, Britain's Sunday Telegraph may have proved that he has done just that.
And in other news, American singer and actress Aaliyah has been killed in a plane crash. She was among 9 people on board a Cessna light aircraft leaving an island in the Bahamas for Miami. 8 people died and 1 survived. It's not known what caused the crash, but it's understood the plane came down shortly after takeoff. Aaliyah sold 1 million copies of her debut album in 1994. She toured South Africa, Europe and Japan. Her film debut came in the movie Romeo Must Die. There were 4 winning tickets sold in the $295 million Powerball lottery, the 3rd largest in U.S. history, held this weekend. The jackpot created a ticket-buying frenzy. Undeterred by astronomical odds, Americans bought record numbers of Powerball lottery tickets. The jackpot offered the choice of 25 payments of $11.8 million each before taxes paid over 24 years, or a single lump sum payment of about $170 million, also before taxes. But this has now got to be split among the 4 lucky winners. In the Middle East, Israel has struck back after yesterday's killing of 3 Israeli soldiers and 2 Jewish settlers by Palestinian militants. Early this morning, warplanes attacked Palestinian posts in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. Tanks and bulldozers also flattened 3 Palestinian security buildings in Rafah near the border with Egypt. The Palestinians accused Israel of trying to destroy its security bases and warned it could inflame the already volatile situation. Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat inspected the damage in Gaza today and said it won't change the will of the people. When NewsHour continues tonight, as VIP guests begin to arrive for the upcoming racism conference, we look at intolerance within the Indian community.
We might have different colored skins, but we've all got red blood. The only thing that divides us is our religion, but that's also not a big deal.
Race and Racism, The Children Speak Out. Special assignment, Tuesday at 9:30 on SABC 3. Also available on Newsbreak.
Must Be a Millionaire is really drama unfolding in front of your eyes.
The questions will be predominantly South African. We're going to have couples on the show.
3 people interacting on stage, which could be a lot more fun.
Just 15 questions and you could be a millionaire. To be a contestant, give us a call, 082 17 303.
It is all systems go for Durban's biggest Indaba ever, the World Conference Against Racism. Now, almost 15,000 delegates are expected to converge in the city, and the recently upgraded Durban International Airport is ready for the deluge.
Durban, where King Shaka, founder of the Zulu nation, welcomed Europeans and even gave them land. 2 centuries later, Durban hosts thousands of foreigners to further the cause of what the great king advocated, non-racialism. Heads of states will be ushered into world-class facilities before being whisked away to their hotels in style on snazzy wheels.
We are fully prepared. We've worked with all of the government agencies, plus all service providers and airlines. We have our plans. They are ready.
Klute is confident that the airport is more than up to the task. On the busiest days, planes will be landing and taking off every 3 minutes. Security is top priority.
Our security readiness is at a high.
The conference venue will be officially handed over to the United Nations for the curation of the Indaba Surveillance cameras have been installed for quick detection of unwelcome guests. Many roads have already been closed.
If they happen to let us know before they do it, it would be better.
Pissed off.
Everywhere you go, there's a traffic jam. Terrible.
We want to appeal to them to be calm because I think the spin-offs are very, very positive.
A joint law enforcement strategy by the SAPS, the Army and the City Police will secure total safety of all. 9 food outlets operating at the ICC will provide meals. Durban has done its bit. Now it's up to participants to make sure that the conference is successful. Linda Mgobozi, SABC, Durban.
During the Racism Conference, the SABC will broadcast a range of programs on its continental and local TV network, as well as on radio, phone and online services. The public broadcaster will also provide support to other broadcasters covering the conference.
It's almost all systems go at Broadcast Village at the Durban Exhibition Centre. The SABC will once again live up to its slogan, the pulse of Africa's creative spirit. This commitment will be broadened to cover networks throughout the world.
All the eyes of the world will be descending on Durban for the next 2 weeks. And the SABC will be the one that is providing them the coverage to all broadcasters such as CNN, BBC, and all other networks up to China, Russia and Europe.
So there's going to be a very broad dissemination of what is happening at the conference through the work of South African Broadcasting Corporation. So we're very grateful and glad that this is happening.
State-of-the-art studios and high-tech broadcast equipment have been rigged. 2 outside broadcast units will be served by 30 cameras with more than 100 staffers on site. 14 radio stations will broadcast live from special studios at the village.
The United Nations Racism Conference has placed all kinds of racial and ethnic intolerance under the spotlight. While South Africa's racial problems are widely known, there are other forms of discrimination, like caste distinction, which still exists among the Indian community here. Renee Horn looks at this community, which fought apartheid, but has yet to come to terms with some of its traditions.
Intermarrying between language and religious faiths is still something that a lot of people are not comfortable with.
A talk show which showcases current affairs, especially life in a community of Indian origin.
How can they say we're mixing and stuff like that? I have a girlfriend who's Hindi, and we have major problems. I'm not given the choices in my life. And on top of that, I don't think our families would actually agree to it. Like, Granny would say something like, I don't know, I know this sounds pathetic, but she'll say something like, how would our children look?
The anguished words of a young man who cannot marry his beloved because she belongs to another religious group. There are many like him. Some have been isolated as outcasts by their families and communities, too afraid to even identify themselves publicly.
When Indians came here, many of them even made up those surnames and made up their caste positions. And maybe because of that, they police it even more greatly than other people.
It's a rich and diverse culture. Indians arrived in South Africa in 1860, first as indentured labourers on sugarcane plantations in the British-governed colony of Natal. Others who were classified as passenger Indians, mainly Gujarati Hindus and Muslims, came later. They were merchants and professionals. For some, social distinction was the centrepiece of their difference with their fellow Indian plantation workers. Others discriminated against their Hindi, Tamil and Telugu-speaking counterparts by virtue of their descent. South Africans of Indian origin are a highly diverse religious and social group. 70% are Hindu, 20% are Muslim, and the rest are Christian. Despite their sharp differences in terms of language, dialect, and religion, they are broadly secular in their outlook. The historical caste system is not as commonplace in some parts of India.
But the majority of Indian South Africans do not practice caste. They don't even know what caste they themselves belong to. Instead, the discrimination lies in language and religion.
Although many Indians fought for South Africa's non-racial democracy, some segments of this uniquely distinct ethnic grouping are still struggling to come to terms with the breaking down of traditional religious and language barriers.
I know some of my friends who are going out to different regions. Their parents are a little bit against it.
The way we've been brought up is such that we want to maintain our religion and our culture.
Yet all is not lost.
Intermarriage between the various religious and ethnic and linguistic groups is not very common. It is more prevalent now than it was, I would say, 15, 20 years ago.
Against the backdrop of the conference, it's pertinent to explore whether the problem of world racism can ever be addressed, while massive divisions and stereotypes occur within race groups. Renee Horn, SABC, Durban.
The strike in the motorcar industry by members of the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa has been suspended, yet there are no winners. The motor manufacturers themselves have lost millions of rands in lost production. The strikers have also had hard times. Now, the average striking worker has lost more than 2,600 rand in wages.
3 weeks, no pay and a family to support. Life is tough in the Mbata household in Mdantsane at the moment. Frank is an employee at Daimler Chrysler in East London, with 2 daughters in the house. One is still at school and the other unemployed. Despite the hardship, life has to go on.
We've run out of Colgate. You get the soap I've got for the face. This is the face soap. That's all we've got. No cooking oil. We've run out of oil. No salt. That's the little bit we've got. It's going to hold us about 4 or 5 days.
Frank says they do get by, borrowing a bit of money from friends and family just to keep the lights going.
These were the leftovers for last night. That's all we've got here in the fridge. And those bottles of ginger there, it's what we're trying to make ends meet. We're selling that ginger so that we can have something at least.
However, he does feel it is his right to strike.
The whole family have supported me, have given me a good support, because I have told them that there was a strike looming. So they were waiting for that. It was not a surprise. They even give me a support and telling me that God is there. He's going to save us. After the strike, he's with us now, and he's going to be with us along the strike until the end of the strike.
Frank will resume his job on Monday morning, but then it will still be 5 days before he receives a paycheck. But it will be some time before life in the Mbata home will return to normal. Yuri Blichnout, SABC, Mdantsane.
With the COSATU strike looming this week, the sacrifices of workers are far from over. This weekend, the animosity between government and COSATU continued. Joining us now to give you a first-hand account of the different perspectives from government and COSATU, we welcome the Transport Minister, Dula Oma, and the General Secretary of the National Union of Mine Workers, Gwete Mantashe. To both of you gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to NewsHour. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Vuyo.
Mr. Mantashe, let's start by describing COSATU's position with regards to the process of restructuring come privatization. Did COSATU agree with government in the tripartite alliance that privatization is the course that should be followed in South Africa?
The understanding of the federation is that the economy has to be restructured, and that includes state-owned assets. Privatization is a different aspect of that. As a federation, we have listed sectors that we think will best serve society by remaining in public hands. And among those, we have listed 11 of them. I hope I will remember all of them, but public transport, electricity distribution and supply, telecommunication, health, education, water, municipal services. You can list all of those. So we have listed those sectors that we think should remain in public hands.
When you say public transport, does that include AXA, the airports company of South Africa?
When we said public transport, our focus is mainly on the transport that is mainly used by the poor and the working people. Trains and the rail system, buses, and all those transport means that actually serve the poor
and the working people.
Would that include taxis as well?
Taxis are actually part of the history of the country. And as far as we're concerned, we think that we should still consolidate our public transport policy and actually refine it to serve the interest of the people and make it more efficient.
What are your main concerns with regards to the process of privatization currently pursued by the government?
The first thing is that in a number of areas, there is not sufficient discussion. When there is no discussion, it defeats the wise words of a great martyr of our revolution, Oliver Tambo, that to take our struggle forward requires the collective wisdom of all the components of the liberation movement. Now, once the debate is not opened up, it takes away that wisdom. That is the first concern. The second concern is that privatization, we have living examples that when certain sectors get privatized, those people who cannot afford, the poor, get worse and worse by the day. And we have examples, if you take electricity, unbundling of electricity supply, for example, separate generation from distribution, creates a situation where you lose the advantage of the different cycles of investment in generation and distribution. And I think the current crisis in the electricity supply industry in Spain is a function of that. And private ownership of electricity is not a very good example. California is an example, New Zealand is an example. You can go all over. And therefore, if you take the privatization of water in Britain, for the first 5 years, tariffs of water in Britain increased more than inflation consistently for 5 years. And therefore, it changes these basic services from being services into being commodities.
Mr. Mantashe, I'd like to go back to the first point that you made about the debate not being open. We talked to the Minister of Public Enterprises, Jeff Radebe, earlier today, and he said that discussions had been going on between yourselves and the government about these particular matters up to last Thursday. And he said as well that the door is open for negotiations to continue. So the debate from that point of view is quite open, isn't it?
The debate, consultation, all of these words. Consultation means you can say your say, we hear what you say, we steam ahead as we planned. And therefore, in the eyes of the public, we are talking. But there are also good examples of where, when there is serious engagement, there are results. Minister Dala Omai is a good example when he took over as the Minister of Transport. In two areas, AXA and in the area of rail. If you take those areas, those discussions reversed an accelerated privatization with serious consequences. The threatened 27,000 jobs that were to be destroyed, we think have been saved. We think so. And that is an example of when there is genuine discussion, you begin to see results. But if you go to communication, there is no discussion. People around government at one point came with the unions to try to stop retrenchment of those workers. And because there was this ideological position taken, everybody was ran over. And those jobs were lost. Over the last 2 years, the telecommunications sector has lost 15,000 jobs, roughly. And it is about poverty, unemployment, job destruction. Those are the main concerns.
Poverty, unemployment, job destruction.
Yes.
How are those ills, how are those problems dealt with by going on strike? We've just been reporting that the strike in the car manufacturing industry has cost the manufacturers millions, has cost the employees millions. So by going on strike, we're not solving those problems, are we?
When you go on strike, you do a number of things. One, you highlight the plight and the negative implications of a policy that actually hurts the bigger portion of community. We had discussion with various ministries. It was confirmed that in these public utilities, when they restress the lowly skilled workers, they don't replace them. If they recruit from the skilled levels. And it means the most vulnerable worker has no opportunity of getting another job. You highlight that plight. Number two, you make the public and society aware of the ills and the sufferings that emanate from what looks as a fancy restructuring process, which tend to throw thousands and thousands of our people in the street into the poverty almost forever.
Mr. Mantashe, let me put this question to you. There's a theory currently doing the rounds, and people are suggesting that this strike is not about the fundamentals of restructuring and privatization affecting the lives of the poor workers within the broad trade union movement, but it's about COSATU looking to flex its muscles ahead of the big ANC conference coming in 2002.
That would be stupid. That's why we've agreed that as the alliance will be in Durban on Saturday, the 1st of September, marching against racism. So to link the two is not correct. This is about the effects of privatization. We have living examples of people who are retrenched in the sectors working. I'm working in the energy sector. I have been engaged in ESCOM since 1985, following through. At that point, when we entered in ESCOM 1985, it employed 66,000 workers. Today, it employs 31,000, less than half. Many of those have been returned after 1994. And then to me, the argument that we can go on strike to highlight the negative implication of privatization of public utilities, I think it would be naive on our part.
Let's bring in the Minister, Dula Uma. Minister, thank you very much for your patience and kindly waiting for your chance to enter the fray and enter the discussion. Has government not failed in selling the values and the ideals of privatization to its alliance members, which is why now we're seeing this protest action, Minister?
Well, I think that there needs to be greater clarity, because there is no wholesale program for privatization. And I think I must state categorically, there is no secret agenda. There is a program to restructure state enterprises, and that does not always equal privatization. There are some instances where we should dispose of enterprises. For example, why should government be running restaurants in parks? Why should government be running holiday resorts? Aventura. There we think we should dispose. But the disposal must be one which also benefits the people as a whole. For example, in the case of Aventura, we are looking at a formula which will enable local communities to participate, so that it's not handing over businesses to fat cats, but to local communities so that it can benefit. There are more than a dozen such holiday resorts in the country. But there's no wholesale privatization program. There are restructuring programs. And many of those restructuring programs entail matters other than privatization. There may be bringing in a strategic equity partner in some instances, but not in all instances. But if you take the case of electricity and the loss of jobs at Eskom, for example, there's been no privatization. So the loss of jobs in Eskom, or in the electricity sector, in the energy sector, was not due to privatization. There are other factors involved. And then also, another example used was cutting off of electricity supply in Soweto. There was no privatization. There are other problems. Problems of poverty, unaffordability. Those are matters that we all need to address together.
Minister, the question that you raised just now, in fact, earlier on, the point that you make about job losses. And we have seen job losses at, for instance, Telkom, with the coming in of a strategic equity partner. And there's a suggestion in a report released today by the president of COSATU, Mr. Willie Madisha, that strategic equity partners also look for organizations or units which are sufficiently thin from which they can then make money. Is that not the case? And is that not going to be the case with Aventura and such like enterprises?
No. You see, restructuring is designed to ensure that we facilitate economic growth. We have to look at the bigger picture, which is that our economy must grow. And for the economy to grow, we must build in efficiencies. Some people don't like it, but we must make our economy competitive. And we must mobilize the whole nation. We must mobilize our state-owned enterprises. We must mobilize the private sector. We must see how we can benefit from resources in the private sector, the management skills in the private sector, technology which becomes available. In the case of Telkom, for example, we envisage that Telkom has a role to play in Africa, as also in the case of Eskom. And we need to gear ourselves, equip ourselves, get the necessary technology and skills to enable us to do that. So bringing in private equity is not always a disadvantage. What we are doing is we look at each enterprise on a case-by-case basis. There's no general formula.
The wording used in the recent past in terms of the accusations that have been flying to and fro, the wording has been very strong and very tough, liars, hypocrites, and so on. Currently, how big is the cleavage within the tripartite alliance?
Well, I think it is a problem, it is a challenge which we need to address. And I think that there is a general misunderstanding about the program. I don't know why. But Comrade Gwedi here is my comrade. We've come together a long way. And I believe that we will continue to go a long way. In the alliance, we need to resolve these matters. And there must be an understanding that restructuring of state-owned enterprises can mean a number of things. It can mean a disposal of assets. There can be partial privatization, strategic equity partner, or restructuring which does not involve any element of privatization.
What can government do to deal with the impact of the strike? 2 days lost out of the working year, including the exposure to the rest of the world, with all of these media personalities and media people coming to attend and report on the World Conference Against Racism.
Yes, with all due respect to COSATU, I do think that the strike is very unfortunate. I don't know what motivates the timing of the strike to coincide with a conference on racism, in which COSATU itself has a very big stake. Racism is a big problem at workplaces all over the country, and I think the whole thing is unfortunate.
Mr. Mantashe, are we going to be able to bring the two parties to work together following the strike, following what we're going to see on the 29th and 30th of this month?
In our view, the strike has been on the horizon for some time. We have gone to NEDLAC, we have gone through the process, we gave notices, we put the date. The coincidence of dates of the strike and the conference is a coincidence. But I want to take up one issue. Eskom job losses as a function of other factors. We have Eskom Amendment Act, which was passed. We have Eskom Conversion Bill, which is on the offing. It prepares Eskom for privatization. The reason for that is that once those two acts are law, it will only take listing Eskom on the stock exchange to change ownership. Therefore, the question of commercialization, corporatization, and ultimately privatize is a process that we have actually did a detailed case study in the British process of privatizing various state-owned assets. So it's not a question of now privatize, it's a question of the processes towards privatizing. Already there is a talk of 30% of generation given to independent power producers. We don't know where that 30% is. Is it in the current assets? Is it in terms of the markets into the future? Therefore, we'll never develop further assets. We don't know. There's no enough explanation.
Mr. Mantashe, we're almost out of time, but Minister, we must give you the final word as well. The job losses, can they really be attributed to privatization and these processes, as Mr. Mantashe so articulately points out?
No. The job losses in Eskom is not due to privatization because there has been no privatization. In the distribution of electricity, no privatization has been put on the table. 6 REDs have been proposed, regional distributors, owned by local authorities, national government having a share. And so thus far there's been no proposal to privatize the distribution. Unlike California, unlike what's happened in Britain, where privatization of distribution took place, this is not the case in South Africa. It's a very different situation.
Thank you very much. Minister Dula Oma and Gwede Mantashe joining us, speaking on behalf of COSATU. Thank you very much for joining us this evening here on NewsHour. When NewsHour continues, a feast for meat lovers. Stay tuned.
3 presents Celtic Spirit. Celtic Spirit. Lose yourself in this album of the most inspiring music. Celtic Spirit. Out now.
Anything. Any change will do, hey? I've got Bogoro. Yeah. Yeah, boy, yes. Oh! Yes?
Now anyone can be in touch.
Okay. I'll call you back. As I was saying...
Vodacom, packed with the power of Vodacom.
Winter is finally over and spring is here. It's time for change, time for new beginnings. Here's a guaranteed 10 million rand lotto jackpot. See how you can change your life. The Lotto Spring Draw, 1st September. Get your ticket now.
Just want to see if Claire thinks my pants are too flashy. My mother says I'm dressed like Christina Aguilera.
I heard you talking in the hall. I like your pants, by the way.
Hi, Claire. Your family's great. All of you just give and you give and you give.
A group of paranoid men and their misadventures. A new comedy series starts Monday, September 3, 7:30 on 3.
Public hearings into government's multi-billion rand arms deal are scheduled to start again in Pretoria tomorrow. This is despite uncertainty about whether or not a key complainant of the arms deal, Dr. Richard Young, will testify.
The hearings were postponed to allow Dr. Young to get clearance from the Minister of Defence to testify. Young says the clearance he's received is conditional and has now asked for permission to speak unhindered. He says part of his testimony contradicts earlier statements by several cabinet ministers and key players in the arms deal that government was not involved in the awarding of subcontracts.
It's very easy for us to prove that the South African government, and specifically the Department of Defence, selected the subsystems and basically instructed the German frigate consortium and African Defence Systems which subsystems to use.
Young says his company, C²I², was selected as the preferred bidder for a 40 million rand subcontract to supply the information management system for the Navy's 4 new corvettes. But that contract was subsequently given to French company de Texas, a sister company of Africa Defence Systems, of which Xavier Sheikh is a director and shareholder. Sheikh's brother Chippy, in turn, is the Chief of Acquisitions of the Department of Defence. Young believes de Texas doesn't meet the South African Navy's specified requirements. Should Young not testify, a summary of his testimony given to the Minister of Defence could be read at the hearings. If this is done, those named in Young's testimony could be called to reply. If not, the hearings could come to an abrupt end. The final report on the investigations into the arms deal is expected to be handed to Parliament by the end of September. Leighton Beard, SABC, Pretoria.
The Eastern Cape's most wanted criminal, Mzimasi Tungulu, is back behind bars. Known as MacGyver, Tungulu escaped from St. Albans Maximum Prison near Port Elizabeth on Thursday. His 10th escape from prison has also led to action being taken against 3 prison officials. MacGyver was serving 60 years for armed robbery, murder and attempted murder.
This is the most wanted man in the Eastern Cape. MacGyver, as he's commonly known by both his gang and prison authorities, has made a mockery of prison security over the past few years. In Thursday's escape, he led prison officials to believe that he had made a daring solo escape out of his cell, then managed to slip out of the maximum security block, surrounded by a double-volume electrified fence. But it was all a ruse. He had inside help. He was rearrested after an intense investigation and search.
We had about 9 members of our task force, including 3 police officials from the crime prevention unit in KwaZulu-Natal. The prisoner did not put up any fight. He immediately once he was told, gave up and was cooperating with the arrest.
Correctional Services has removed the head of the St Albans Maximum Prison in Port Elizabeth, Silverman Nomzanga. 2 other Correctional Service officials are likely to be suspended in connection with the latest escape. Correctional Services will consult the Justice Department about the possibility of moving Magava to CMAX in Pretoria. Prison authorities are remaining tight-lipped where they are keeping Magava at this stage, but they are hoping with the suspension of the officials that there will be no more escapes for him. Janine Lee, SABC, Port Elizabeth.
The Kruger National Park's northern boundary fences have been falling down ever since the floods last year, and the park authorities have yet to repair them. People living near the park in the north are losing their livestock and in some instances their lives. Some of the following visuals may be disturbing to sensitive viewers.
2 buffaloes were shot and killed outside the park 2 days before the SABC crew arrived. They had escaped through the fence. One of the 2 lionesses which killed 2 donkeys outside the park suffered the same fate.
I used the donkeys for financial survival, and now they are dead. I will not get any money for survival since they are dead.
The park management and the threatened communities have, however, reached an interim agreement. If a predator kills their livestock, it will be killed and the meat given to the livestock owner. Early this year, a woman was killed by an elephant while working in the field in Matiane. The crops that she planted to feed a family before the tragedy were also destroyed by wild animals.
I do not know how to help my family alone because I am even unemployed.
In 1999, 50 head of cattle were killed by lions. In the year 2000, 28 head of cattle and 3 donkeys were killed. So far this year, 30 head of cattle have been killed. One of the farmers who suffered losses blames the Kruger National Park authorities.
I spoke to them in the park and they said they would compensate me for my cattle.
The Northern Province government has contracted professional hunters to deal with game escaping from the park. The southern part of the fence has been repaired, but farmers affected by the floods still haven't received compensation from the flood relief fund.
Government is sent the extension officer to come and investigate the damage. But they came, but they've written everything, but now they didn't come back until now.
Some community members say government should have repaired the northern part of the park fence first instead of the southern part. They say that would have secured the lives of people and their livestock. Minister Vali Musa's office, concerning his statement last year about the re-erection of the southern part of the fence, referred the SABC to the South African national parks. They in turn said the fence was the responsibility of the Department of Veterinary Sciences. The Department of Agriculture Veterinary Sciences Director, Gideon Bruchner, gave the assurance that progress had been made. Tumelo Matloha, SABC, Kruger National Park.
Former President Nelson Mandela's book, Long Walk to Freedom, can now be read by all South Africans. The book's been translated into all official 11 languages, and this evening the Afrikaans, Sepedi, Xhosa and Zulu editions were launched at a function in Johannesburg.
Hundreds of distinguished guests attended the launch, among them Zulu King Goodwill Zwelithini, Deputy President Jacob Zuma, Bishop Barnabas Lekhanyane, Constitutional Court Judge Albi Sachs, and human rights lawyer George Bizos. Former Transport Minister Mark Maharaj, who was a guest speaker, told of how he smuggled the early manuscript out of the Robben Island.
As it happened, Madiba wrote every night 10 to 15 pages. It was then concealed, prepared for smuggling out. And when I was released in December 76, it was concealed in a file and brought out and sent to London. And then in London, the late president of the ANC, Oliver Tambo, when I explained what we had done, sent me to London for 6 months and gave me those 6 months and a person to work with me to transcribe everything from that concealed writing into a typed version.
Master of Ceremonies, Cyril Ramaphosa, challenged the publisher not to forget other spoken languages such as San and Sign languages. King Goodwill Zwelithini received the Zulu version of the book. The Afrikaans translation to Lang Pat Na Vrede was translated by Antjie Krog. The isiZulu by Professor Ntuli, Sepedi by Professor Serudu, and isiXhosa was done by Professor Mtuze. Editions in 6 other languages will be launched next year. Noma Kitting, SABC, Johannesburg.
The Calvinia Meat Festival seems to be drawing more and more visitors to the Northern Cape than ever before. It was the 12th one this year, and thousands came from here in South Africa as well as from other parts of the world. And all they had to take to the festival were their teeth.
Calvinia in the Hantam region of the Northern Cape was the place to be this weekend. The annual Meat Festival has a day-long atmosphere of celebration. It's enough to make a vegetarian shudder. Meat lovers feasting on all sorts of meat dishes, delicious delicacies such as offal, lamb's tail, and sheep's head.
Very nice. We enjoy it. I think it's the best one so far.
The Meat Festival is more than just a local holiday. It's also a homecoming for those who work far away, such as in Cape Town.
Ek is 'n boerling van Calvinia en so is baie lekker. Ons elke jaar en ek woon elke jaar die vleisjies by.
Even the Springboks' defeat against New Zealand couldn't dampen their spirits. All the way from New Zealand, Alan Gimel won last year's sheep-sharing competition. He was here at the Meat Festival again this year, showing South Africans just how it's done.
I'm sponsored by the New Zealand government on a foreign aid project. I'm over here to help rural people to try and find employment through shearing.
The Meat Festival is also a shopaholic's dream. And the highlight of the year for this small Karoo town. It's a time for forgetting life's troubles and dancing the night away. Tamba Jacobs, SABC, Calvinia.
When we return, the other really important news of the day, the sports news. Stay with NewsHour.
To make life a little easier, we're offering more locations where you can buy a new TV license or renew it. Plus, we've added more places to just renew yours. You can also ask your bank to link your TV license to your bank account for internet, ATM or self-service terminal payment. And now you can also pay your TV license the QuickPay way. Call the QuickPay customer care line number today for your nearest outlet. And remember to bring your TV license number. Come on, it's not that difficult. And after all, it's the right thing to do.
Investigated by the Office of Professional Responsibility. What? You're accused of using your supervisorial position at Quantico to force a sexual relationship with a subordinate.
I didn't want to hurt you, but the truth of the matter is, you were a washout.
The charge has been brought.
You know, this could cost me my career.
So you better prepare for it.
You want somebody to tell you that it's okay. That you may be doing the wrong thing, but for the right reasons.
Sex, lies, and red tape puts Rachel up against it in Profiler, Tuesday.
Ripley's Believe It or Not. Johnny Tong can mesmerize snakes into submission. He can also send them squirming through his nose. When the Invisibles approach, terror strikes. Because if you don't give them what they want, they'll put a curse on you. Synthetic seawater, non-stick sand, and picture-perfect waves. It's the beach attracting the world's top surfers, and it's all indoors.
Unbelievable? Thursday at 8:30 on 3.
We begin with the soccer news, and Premier Soccer League rookies, the Black Leopards, have stayed on top of the Premier Soccer League after registering a well-deserved 3-0 win over Classic of Tembisa. This was Leopards' third straight win in a row in top-flight football.
Black Leopards played attacking football from the first whistle. The less experienced Northern Province side had Classic under a lot of pressure, but their forwards let them down.
For Leopards to take the lead.
Also had several attempts at goal in the opening stanza. Leopards' best opportunity came in the 34th minute, but they couldn't convert. The visitors scored a well-deserved goal on the stroke of half-time through their captain, Coxwell Rachibadelo. Leopards stretched their lead from the penalty spot after a foul by Classic captain David Malatulu.
Can he put it away?
Mpotagada converted from the spot.
Well-taken penalty.
Classic doubled their work rate and started railing their opponent's goal mouth. Ida Peterside denied Leopards midway through the second half.
Peterside did well on that occasion.
But Leopards put the issue beyond doubt with only 19 minutes remaining through Mulondo Shikubili.
Leopards and a free header! A free header again!
There could have been more goals, but Peterside denied Leopards just before the final whistle.
And Inokadebe blows this game to an end.
SABC.
And
here now are the full results of Premier Soccer League matches played throughout the country today. SuperSport United lost 2-0 at home against Free State Stars. Ajax of Cape Town gave AmaZulu a rude welcoming to the Elite League with a 4-1 drubbing at Newlands Stadium in Cape Town. And Golden Arrows narrowly beat Bushbucks by 3-2. England are facing another humiliating defeat at the hands of Australia on the 4th day of the 5th and final Ashes test at the Oval. When rain stopped play at lunch, they were struggling at 40-1 after being forced to follow on. Resuming at 409 for 8, England were dismissed for 432. This 10 runs short of a follow-on target. This target, of course, to avoid the follow-on. They are still 169 runs short of making Australia bet again. In fact, Australia's mammoth total of 641 for 4 in the first innings. The athletics news now, and Japan's Yasufumi Mikami won the men's World 100 kilometers road racing title, this in Cleda in France. Elvira Kalova of Russia won the women's section. The men's team title went to France, while Russia took the women's event. That's the sports news, and that's News Hour for tonight. Thank you very much for joining us. In just a moment, Simon Gear will be giving you a comprehensive weather report for the rest of the week. Have a good week. Bye-bye.